Hello, and thanks for joining tonight's conversations about autism, how to help my kid make progress. We'll begin promptly at 7 p.m.
Welcome to Conversations About Autism. My name is Jennifer Mannheim, and I'm your host tonight. If this is your first time watching, I hope you enjoy this conversation, and I encourage you to check out our other conversations we had in January and February that focused on what is autism and first steps after a diagnosis. Tonight, our focus is going to be on supporting your child who's been diagnosed with autism. And we are lucky enough to have 4 amazing guests tonight who will be sharing their experiences of accessing resources and support to help autistic individuals make progress. And so our first guest is an autistic self-advocate. And I first heard him speak December at a group of autistic providers. And he blew me away. And so I knew I had to have him come and speak with all of you, and you get to hear his story. And Tariq is also joined tonight by his longtime aide and friend, Morgan. And so I'm going to turn it over to Tariq first here to introduce himself, and we'll see a few photos as well.
My thing says that we're, oh, there we go.
There you go.
So Tariq is limited verbal. So he talks through facilitated communication, and he's prepared a lot of information, including this introduction. My name is Tariq Carmen Jones. I'm a 23-year-old autistic self-advocate. In the last 2 years, my family has moved to a farm that we are very busy with. We are working on getting the farm running in hopes of getting it, having it be a place for young adults with special needs. I also work with the UW Echo Autism Resources Program. I'm a high school graduate. I went to GATE, which is a work training program. He has a lot of college credits. He was going to Clark College here in Vancouver. And then he stopped his formal education because he wanted to focus more on his life skills at this point in his life. He enjoys basketball, soccer, swimming, skiing, traveling, anything has to do with water. I am a bit anxious doing this, but it is one of my goals, and thank you all for having me.
Awesome. And we've got some photos here, it looks like, as well, Tariq, when you were younger and as you're getting older.
Yeah, that's him playing Unified.
Excellent. And there it looks like you're skiing.
He skis a lot. He gets his ski pass every year and goes quite a bit.
Here it looks like the two of you are together there. Did you want to tell us a little bit about these photos, Morgan?
Yeah, so when we go skiing up at Mount Hood, the hot tub picture and this one of the two of us in the snow is there's a little resort right there that we go to once or twice a year. and stay there. He loves to do it. He goes from skiing, food, hot tub, which are probably his 3 favorite things: water, eating, skiing. And then on the right, he was a groomsman in my wedding. And yeah, I was honored to have him be a groomsman in my wedding. It was great.
That is so awesome. I realize you can't see me now because I had to be on my phone. I had some tech issues just before all this began, and somebody was going to Snapchat.
It looks like we might have lost Jen's video. I'll maybe just pop in and cover for a minute while she's getting herself back up and running. I'll introduce myself more in a few minutes. I'm Mendy Minharas, and I'm the director of the Seattle Children's Autism Center, and I work with Jen. But I know the next thing we were going to do, Morgan, is have you introduce yourself a little bit more. So maybe we can move on to that while Jen is getting herself situated. And then we'll go on to you, Ashanti.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm Morgan Joe. I've been working with kids and young adults with special needs for a while now, like going on 20 years. I've been working with Tarek for going on 10 years, and I was hired to work with Tarek and the family when he was going after a lot of his goals, and they were causing him a lot of stresses and behaviors, and he was getting to be a pretty big guy. As you can see, he's not a little guy. So he was, I started working with him at the end of his 7th grade year. I don't know what just happened. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I started working with Tarek at the end of his 7th grade year, and he was working on things like eating out at restaurants, driving in the car, going to movies, sleeping away from home, and then transitioning from fun activities. So basically, when the fun was stopping, he would have some pretty good behaviors. And now I'd proudly say that we just, he rarely has behaviors, and he and I just work on his life skills, the goals he set for himself, such as this, advocating for other autistic kids or adults, people. Yeah, and we've traveled to Japan, we've gone to Mexico. I mean, we went from where he had a tough time riding in the car to where we've traveled internationally, domestically. We've driven across the country. Yeah, he crushed all those goals, and now we're here.
That is so awesome. Hold on here. I apologize for my tech issues. I was all good to go, and now I'm not as good to go. But and so I also thank you so much, Tarek and Morgan, for being here tonight. And I also want to introduce our other presenters today, including Ashanti. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll go on to Mindy after that?
Yes, hello, and thank you, Jennifer and Mindy and the Seattle Children's Autism Center for having me. My name is Ashanti Proctor, and I am the mother of my amazing 11-year-old, Asan. We have been a part of the Seattle Autism Center, Seattle Children's Autism Center since 2014. I believe that is when we came to get our diagnosis. I knew that my child was having symptoms and signs of autism early on. I recognized around his 2nd birthday. So I immediately got him in birth to 3, and the next step was becoming affiliated with the Autism Center. And as you can see there, that's my baby. Those pictures right there, especially the Golden Gate Bridge. My son, is a movie buff, so he loves travel, but he faced his fears in that picture. We had just gotten off of his first flight that he could remember. And for anyone who has a child on the spectrum, when they have their anxieties, they have them. And so one thing about my child, though, we have faced many we've faced many challenges, but we have triumphed through. And so, yes, my name is Ashanti, and I'm here to share my story about my 11-year-old. I also have an 8-year-old, and yeah, Jennifer.
Awesome. No, Ashanti, I knew you'd be a great person to come here and speak tonight because you are this amazing mom that I've had the pleasure of working with for a number of years. And I just know there's so many families who will benefit from hearing about your successes and how you've really navigated these systems. So we'll definitely talk some more about that. But I'm also going to have Mindy introduce herself. Mindy?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I'm Mindy Minhares, and I am a licensed psychologist. And my role at Seattle Children's is I'm actually the director of the Autism Center. So I have experience both in assessment and diagnosis of autism, but also in treatment. And the areas I specialize in treatment-wise are things like parent training and behavioral interventions, especially in early interventions. So I've worked with the whole age range, but I've worked the most with very young kids with autism. And I've done quite a bit of delivering the diagnosis and working with families in the early stages and that kind of thing, which is some of what we're going to, talk about tonight. So I think it'll be really, really cool to have the different perspectives of a family that has gone through it, a provider and what they have found to be helpful for families, and then a self-advocate and what some of that, journey has been like. So it is a privilege to be here with a panel of people who are all experts in their own right.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mindy. And thanks also for saving me there as my internet cut out. And
oh yeah, no worries.
Hopefully this will work better. I don't know what my internet looks like for you guys right now. I think it might be, is it a little choppy?
It's a little choppy, but we can hear you fine.
Choppy.
So
okay.
Yeah, I think we can.
The best laid plans, right? That's kind of how it goes. All right. So Mindy, what I would love for you to share with our audience tonight, and I know you've had much experience, as you said, diagnosing and delivering the diagnosis to families. And so could you tell us just a little bit about those families who are newly diagnosed and what kind of advice you give to them about how to best support their child?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I know I was thinking about this ahead of time and kind of thinking like, what do I think are some of the most important messages for families? And, on the one hand, you might think, oh, I'm a provider. And so maybe I'm like, you should do this intervention or you should try this strategy. But I actually think my advice is much broader than that. I think it's much more, I oftentimes talk with families about, we deliver so much information and it's so overwhelming in that feedback appointment or that diagnostic appointment where you're hearing that, yes, we do think your child has autism. And now here are 17 million things that, we recommend you go do. And, I think it's really important for families to leave that visit understanding that like, this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? Or this is a journey, not a race, those kinds of things. And so on the one hand, I typically go over quite a few recommendations. And then on the other hand, I say to families, like, if you get one or two things done, started going in the next couple months, like that is a great goal. Like there's usually so many different service systems that families have to access. There's so many different recommendations that get made about school and treatments and follow-up appointments and all these things. And, I think just getting a couple things started, contact the school, let your school team know, or if your child isn't in school yet, let the school know, hey, I've got a child who's just been diagnosed and I'm going to need some support. Or contact your Birth to 3 program, which is, the state programming for children under the age of 3 who have developmental delays. Let them know, hey, I'm going to need support. Start behavioral treatment if that's been recommended, that kind of thing. But don't kill yourself trying to do those 17,000 recommendations in like the first month, because this is a journey. And, I think that people can end up just really kind of sinking themselves and not realizing like we don't have to get this all done right away. We can start small and we will get there. I mean, I have spent time actually, you know, with families that I work with closely, I have spent time actually trying to slow people down, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? Like we gotta slow you down. We gotta help you take a breath. We gotta like, may I be happy? May I be healthy? May I have peace? You know, get some like meditations and mantras going. And we gotta sort of take this one step at a time. So I think that is, that's like probably one of the biggest ones. I don't want to take too much time, but I do think, you know, two other important things that I would just add that are really in kind of different categories. One is, it's just so easy to compare your child to the children that are around you, whether they're typically developing, whether they're other children with autism. It doesn't really matter. You know, it's so tempting to look at another child that you see and say, well, my child is or isn't doing that thing. And so to remember, your child's best measuring stick, so to speak, is themselves. So, you know, progress compared to themselves is what we're looking for, not compared to other people. I think that's a really important message. And I think the last one, you know, it's families end up facing so many stressors when they get the diagnosis. And one of those is people who are unsupportive, people who don't believe that it's true, family members who might say, you know, this, we don't think so. He or she is too young. Or it can even be like people in the store who are rude because of how the child is behaving, right? It can be all sorts of things. So circle your wagons, right? Get your people around you who are going to be your positive people, your supportive people who give you positive messages. And, you know, and then when you're experiencing those negative moments, you know, oh, I can turn to this person in my life because they're a positive source of, you know, support for me or energy for me. And so kind of be really thoughtful, I think, about like, who are my positive energy people? Because there's a lot of stress for families when they're kind of going through that. So I'll stop. I know we've got lots of.
No, Mindy, you bring up so many wonderful things, and I'm going to have Ashanti and Tarek also talk a little bit about those topics you bring up, because I hear you. Your first thing you're saying is it's a journey and not a race, and sometimes that journey is a long marathon, and you got to figure out how you're going to get, you know, where you're going and taking that long journey. Also, not comparing maybe your kids to other kids and just to themselves. And I know it's a really hard thing. I'm actually, it's a really hard one. And then also support, making sure you got your support system, because there's going to be some tough days out there, and figuring out like who you're going to go to kind of get you through that. And so, Ashanti, I want to go to you next, because I think a lot of this is probably stuff that you experienced as well too when your son was first diagnosed. And so I guess of what Mindy was talking about there, like what things were most helpful for you earlier on, and then as you've been going through this journey, like what's been helpful getting you through getting that support?
Yes, thank you. And Mindy hit everything, Mindy. But in the beginning, you know, what helped me really was I had to, it was tough. It was just extremely tough. I took it very personal. I think any parent initially, especially my firstborn child, you take it personal. And then when you begin to love that child, you get out of the personal state and you start to really love the person that you're getting ready to advocate and embark on this journey with. And so for me, it was tapping into resources. It was what can I do? Who can help me? Who can help me to understand? Who can help me to learn? And I really tapped into the Seattle Children's Autism Center a lot. I had to even, I would receive counseling sessions there for myself to help my child. And then, my son began developmental preschool pretty early. And so you just start to uh, become familiar with the professionals and ask tons of questions and see what other parents were doing. I mean, research online. But it was it was a journey in the beginning that was very tough, very arduous, because I mentally had to get out of what I had thought or hoped for my child. And so in doing that, you find yourself becoming a new person, a new parent, kind of like times two. Um, and so I think, I hope that answers that question, that
Oh,
initial
and
question, Jennifer.
absolutely, and then some. And I know that early on at the Autism Center, we did have some family counseling kind of support that was there, and now it's kind of more in the community that we have people seek some of those, because it's super important. You know, you're running the show, and you need someone to kind of help you kind of get yourself in a good spot where you can be there and be present. And that is one thing I've always thought about you, Ashanti, is that you've done that. And one other thing you did, I mean, you're a single mom, right? And you have really done it. And just thinking about how you've supported your son and resources you've used,
Hmm.
and you've maximized all of those things, and including, like, using of some FMLA, and you've been such an advocate. I mean, like, getting involved in all aspects of him and his learning, because early on he wasn't
Yes.
talking and doing as much, and he was more now. So in that journey
Mhm.
there, like, what do you feel like was most supportive, and how did you feel like you kind of got there?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, thank you for this. And I'm happy to share. I went through a point where I just said, I got to give my child um, the best uh, chance ever. And so I ended up, researching the best, not the best schools, like some of the schools in Seattle. And I knew that there was the EEU at the UW, and that is surrounded with professionals. And I knew that I wanted my son to go there, and so I knew that it was a lottery. I knew that I would have to figure out a way to get him in there. It's not just pick me. And so one of the things that I did is they had all kind of data um, uh, studies going on, and I just got my foot in the door. We got rejected for preschool, but we kept going once a week, and we were allowing these professionals to test us. I don't know the correct word off gate, but there were all kind of studies that these people were doing at the UW. And so that's how you go and you meet people. And then for kindergarten, we got in there, and I was able to be around other parents who had just like this limitless knowledge of what is out there, what resources, how you um, go about IEPs, and what you do and what you ask for and what you expect, and so yeah, I rolled up my sleeves, through the hurt or the not knowing, and I just got busy for my child. We just Yeah, we just really immersed ourselves in the communities of children with special needs. I
and
hope
so,
that answers.
yeah, no, bring up one more thing that Mindy brought up, and I wanted to ask you as well too, because I know it's kind of a sensitive issue. A little, it can be, right, when
Hmm.
you're, as Mindy was
Yeah.
saying, like, you see other kids and what they're doing and the progress they're making, and your son's making
Hmm.
progress. You can see it, but it's
Yep.
at, like, how do you as a parent, like, how do you deal with some of those feelings? What was a way that you kind of continue to get through that?
Yeah. So One thing I haven't said is how remarkable my child is. When we first came to the Autism Center, I do not think my son was talking. I had to learn how to find visual placards and place them all over the house, the bathroom. We learned baby sign language. We did it all. But my child, because he has an amazing mother who would not give up on him, I decided that we are just going to approach this, day by day, goal by goal, milestone by milestone. And, you know, there were times where I was like, he's not talking like the other children, or he's not, doing things. But my son, I can't go back and to everything, but my son currently is reading at his grade level. He's writing essays, he's doing fractions. I mean, we made progress just because I chose, and like many parents, I chose not to give up. I chose, to figure out a way to make his IEP reflect to where he had, the hours such as typical learning students, within the general eds classes. And we did private therapy. But because I do have another child who is a typical learner, and she is a great big sister, that was a key thing right there. That was a blessing for us, because my son kind of got to learn everything twice. He saw me, everything that I taught him, whether it was academic or basic life skills, it was a reiteration for him. And then it put him in the bigger kid mode, even though still to this day, my daughter is kind of like the big sister, but he got to learn life skills and even education all over again. And so you just take the little pieces by little pieces, and you put it together, and that with goodwill and ambition, it's unstoppable. But there are times still to this day where I struggle with knowing that my child is different. My child, will he be able to drive? Will he, I know he's going to college, but will he get, have a family? Those types of things, as a parent, I do struggle with. But the joy in looking back and where we've come from and where we are right now, it does something to your optimism about where we're headed. And so I can't, it doesn't really affect me as much, because my son he's hanging in there, and he's just a great kid.
Well, I will second that, because I've met him and I know him, so I can verify you are correct in saying that. So thanks for sharing that information, that story, because I know you're not alone in a lot of the struggles, and I'm sure there's families out there who benefit from hearing some of those things. And now I'm going to move a little to Tarek as well too, and so much of this dovetails into kind of your experience and what you've had. And so what if you might share a little bit first, what are some ways that you communicate now? Do you use like a text to speak, or what are some ways that you do that?
So again, I told you guys all, but for people watching, I have a screen over here of things that Tarek has already prepared and written. So that's why I'm looking away. Let me find it really quick.
Absolutely. And we
says, sorry. I sometimes use text to speech, but I only prefer that when I'm working with somebody that I don't know as well, to feel like I'm talking for myself. But I don't like the lack of emotion and personality that text to speech offers, in my experience. And then but when I'm working with somebody that I do know well, I like it when they talk, when they read on talking. Oh, sorry, I missed what this. And they have more of a representative of my individuality when they know me. And I just like that better than the robotic text to speech.
All right, that's super helpful and good information to know there. And Do you remember when others realized you could communicate in ways other than speaking words? And so what was that like for you, and what was that like for you then and before people knew?
He says, so this still happens to me very frequently, that people don't think that I can talk. As far as how I feel before they know, I actually enjoy it. It's not always that they don't know that I can't communicate, but they also don't realize that I understand. And sometimes that allows me to hear unfiltered conversations, which sometimes is very hard to deal with. But I can also filter out those people that I have no interest in dealing with. And it does upset me sometimes hearing people talk about me thinking that I can't comprehend what they're saying. But I have tried to make these situations learning opportunities. I found that a lot of people that don't have a lot of experience with individuals with autism often think that that means that we have intellectual impairments as well, and that is not the case. And I want people to learn that.
That is very powerful, Tarek. Thank you for sharing that. And so I'm also wondering, what were things that maybe your parents did? Well, actually, first, going on kind of this topic, because I know what you're saying here, that a lot of people will talk, and if they don't think maybe you understand, that they're having conversations around you. And what would you like to tell parents watching tonight, especially those with younger kids who aren't talking yet, about communicating with their kids? What would be some advice you would give them surrounding that?
I would tell parents watching tonight to keep an open mind. Nobody knows what the capabilities or potentials of their child is, neurotypical or special needs. Never shy away from anything, and the things that are toughest need to be done the most. So he said I could elaborate a bit, and like when he was talking about eating out, I find that very common when you have a young child with special needs and they're having difficulties eating out. A lot of the times parents they just won't do that, and then they grow to be right, as big as Tarek, and they haven't worked on those things. So at that point, they didn't use it, so they lost it. And now when you're having those behaviors as an adult, it's very hard at that point. So that was something that Tarek did a lot when I got hired working with him, and he was having trouble eating out. That's exactly what we did. We weren't irresponsible about it. We practiced at home, then we practiced at like the Burgerville, but we timed it to where there was barely any other patrons there. And then we went when it had busier times, and then peak times, all the way up to 5-star restaurants now. And it's no problem. So he never shies away from the things that are most. Sure, they get uncomfortable. He doesn't want to do it. Takes a little coaxing, but we get it done. And he said to those parents who have children, they're not speaking yet, don't get too hung up on the speech. It might come, it might not. It doesn't really matter. The real goal is to just find an efficient way of communicating, and it doesn't matter what that is.
I love that you said that. It's actually almost bring tears to my eyes, because I think it's so true, is really just trying to find a way to communicate, and it's not always about the words. And so actually next month, we're going to have even more conversations about early conversations and early language. And so hope those of you who are struggling with this will join us for that one as well, too. But what I'm wondering, Tarek, what were some things your parents did early on that did help you? What did you feel like was helpful?
Sorry. My parents never put a cap on me. People and specialists said I would never be able to do certain things. You're never going to know that. Until it's all said and done. A good example would be people said I would never be able to ride a 2-wheeler bike on the road, obeying traffic laws, completely independently. That is something that takes a lot of typically developing kids 10 minutes to learn sometimes. It took me the better part of 10 years, but I can do it now. So, it really tells you, at what part do you give up? 8 years, 7 years, 5 years? It would have been too soon, because at 10 years, he was able to do it. They also have always to continue to fight for whatever accommodations and services I need and are available for me to be successful. Even when the things that I want to do not align with theirs. He has a funny example here too. He said that when he was in the 8th grade, he had one of his first crushes, and it turned out she was Mormon, and he learned that Mormons typically date or go on dates with other Mormon people. So I thought maybe I wanted to convert to Mormonism at 14 years old. So even though my parents are not religious at all, they had 2 boys that were on their mission in our neighborhood come over and talk to me for over a month. I did not end up converting, but my point to my story is that even when my interests and curiosities do not align with my parents or their views, they still support me in it, and they give me everything I need to be successful in those.
It's another great story. Thank you for sharing that. And so I am wondering, even some of the specialists that you've worked with, maybe speech therapists or occupational therapists, what were some things that they did early on that was helpful to you?
I'm sorry, that was the question for the specialist that had helped?
Yep.
Okay.
Because we even have a message here in the YouTube chat that was talking a little bit about modeling and speech therapists and parent pairing and partnerships and therapies. And so I'm wondering for you, Tarek, what did you feel was helpful?
He said, I had a speech therapist. They tried to help me with he's had a few speech therapists, but he was saying that I had a speech therapist. So I had a speech therapist that tried to help me with my speech by doing a lot of things that did not work for me, but it worked for her other students, and she was set on just going through these motions, and I felt like it was a completely waste of time. And other specialists have done these things that have worked with other people but did not work for me. That's basically any specialist that was willing to really figure out what worked for me individually at least made some progress, and a lot of times we made a lot of progress. And a lot of the times it took very outside the box strategies. There aren't things that you're going to find in textbooks and things like that that worked for him, worked for me.
That is great too. And Morgan, I was going to ask you, what are some things that you have found? What have been some of the most helpful ways for you to help Tarek when he's been challenged?
So I think that I'd break it down probably 3 things. It's holding him accountable for the things that we discuss, that he comes up on his own. It's the consistency in doing it. And then for him, especially when he's having a tough time, it's language. It's using like a correct language, and it's very specific. I think like an example would be doing this. He's very anxious doing this, and he potentially could get up and walk away. And right, I'm a support. I'm not his boss, so I would never tell him to come sit back down. But when you paint a picture for Tarek, it seems to work really well. So if I ask him something like, what do you think the people watching are thinking when you get up and walk away in the middle of a thing? And he might, he'll answer it. And usually it's, it might come across rude, that I don't care, that I'm not, even though we both know it's just because he's anxious, but he knows that people don't understand him, would think, that maybe it looks rude or something. And I say, okay, well, what do you think? Do you want to make people feel that way? And I don't know if they feel that way, but I think that that's a reasonable thing to think, possibly. Do you want them to think that? Do you want to portray that? And if he says no, when he can, when I help him paint these pictures himself, it's much more motivating than I'm never going to project my beliefs. Oh, they think you're rude. They're this. You need to come sit back down. That upsets him when people do that, and it's just very fine differences in a language that sometimes can set him off, and then it's the difference of setting him off or helping him overcome. And a lot of times, like in that scenario, he will come and sit back down, and he'll be more motivated, especially when it benefits other people. It motivates him when his actions can reach other people, and he can work through these things, right? I don't boss him around or anything like that. And I think those are the keys to his success in just situations and on.
That is a wonderful response. Thanks. What you said there, Tarek, as well as you, Morgan, about finding someone who's able to think outside the box and kind of go to your needs. And so I'm going to bring it back to Mindy here and see if Mindy maybe has some thoughts about, and Mindy, I know you got lots going on at your house. So if you have some thoughts about, like, as a psychologist, as a person who works with especially young kids and as they get older, like, what are some good ways for parents maybe to ask or to advocate, or for autistics themselves to advocate for thinking outside the box?
Yeah, as you guys were talking, Tarek and Morgan, I was thinking, man, these thoughts are like spot on. They are just so it's such great messaging for parents. It's such great messaging for providers. And I think there's a few things I think that you guys said that resonate for me, and I might get off your question, Jen, here, because I was having all kinds of thoughts while they were talking. Okay. So feel free to bring me back to your question if I'm not hitting, things that you think are where we want to be. But I think the notion that, Morgan, one of the things that I sort of was, I don't know, the reading between the lines of what you were saying is you're partnering there with Tarek. You're not, like you said, you're not his boss. You're not putting yourself above him. You're partnering with him. And I actually, unfortunately, think that in and of itself is out of the box for a lot of people. I think, like that mentality of, from a therapist perspective, I think it's very easy for a therapist or a clinician, someone who has a lot of expertise, to kind of automatically place themselves above the person, that they're working with. And I think even with, incredibly young kids, it can be a partnership. And so I talk to parents about this a lot. We talk about things like motivation, and that if I'm going to, and especially as someone who does behavior therapy, if I'm going to teach you how to use behavior therapy strategies to work with your child on communication, for example, or social interaction skills, that like the most important thing, the starting point, the whole framework for everything is we don't do that in a context where the child isn't motivated and engaged and interested in things. And so right there, you're partnering with the child, right? Or the person, as they get older, because you're saying, what are you interested in? What makes you tick? What drives your motivation? And it can be anything. I mean, if you have a special interest in some certain area, it doesn't matter if you have one interest or 100,000 interests. We can partner around how we're going to embed the therapy goals in that, how we're going to, get the work done that we need to do to help you be your best self, in a motivational context. And I think, like I said, I think that is in and of itself kind of outside the box for a lot of therapists. And they just come in sort of with their strategies and with their game plan, and they do it to the person as opposed to with the person. So, I mean, as far as how you advocate for that, I think that was really your question, Jen. I think that's really hard. And I do spend a lot of time, like, because I work in ABA, I spend a lot of time talking to parents about questions they can ask about how the therapy is being implemented, for example. And I, it's like, I can't teach them everything about ABA. It's not a master's degree program or a doctoral program. It's parent training, parent education. But I try to, I say to them, like, I just want you to know enough that you can walk in there and you can ask questions and you can push on things that don't seem right to you, and that you have enough confidence in yourself that you know your child, and that I've given you a little bit of knowledge here about ABA, that you can, feel empowered to go and be that advocate and push back if you don't think it's, seems right. And I mean, it's like, it's very non-clinical advice, but I tell parents all the time, like, you got to trust your gut. Like, if it doesn't seem like it's your child's jam, it's probably not their jam. And like therapy shouldn't be miserable. Therapy shouldn't be, drudgery. Therapy, I mean, it should be fun. And it's, I often kind of compare it to just kids going to school. I mean, if school is being implemented well for any kid, yeah, okay, maybe they don't like math or maybe science isn't their favorite subject, but like school should be fun, right? Like there should be all kinds of engaging activities and opportunities being given to kids, and therapy should be the same way. And so I think that's one of the things that really struck me about what you guys were saying is you have a partnership. You don't have it's not a doing to, relationship. It's a doing together relationship.
That is exactly answering that question, Mindy.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So as a therapist, I heard you definitely say some important things as far as really figuring out what the motivation is for the person you're working with, and using that and making sure it's fun and motivating. And then when working with parents is, having them follow their gut. And if they're feeling like this is not working well for my kid, they are not happy, they are not enjoying it, they don't want to go, it's drudgery, then maybe it's not the right approach. And so finding somebody who can take a different approach, or working with that therapist to kind of come up with those other approaches. I think that is right on the money. And so I'm actually going to go next to Ashanti. And I know you have also kind of gone through some of this with school as well as therapies. And so I'm so interested in your perspective on this as well, too.
Yes. Again, I just love everything Mindy says. And I certainly enjoyed hearing Tariq. Am I pronouncing that right? Tariq. Tariq, excuse me. I certainly enjoyed hearing Tariq's story. Wow, I'm so inspired. I truly am. But yes, therapies. We're still in therapy. Obviously, not just through the school district, but private. We have done speech therapy. We're still in speech therapy, private speech therapy, and the speech therapy services through the school district, ABA. What other therapies are there? Excuse me. But
speech.
Yes.
Go for it.
Yeah, speech, ABA, with the occupational therapy. It's just been one of those things where when you talked about the motivation, Mindy, we've had stages. We've obviously had ages and stages. And in the beginning, it was just, I want my child to be a learner. I want him to try to be typical. So I'm going to put him in the educational settings or with the therapies that help him to be a student. And then it was, okay, now I want this person to try to learn life skills, and now it's, we're trying to have a son where he's advocating for himself. He has a speech therapist where we're dealing with little things like inferences and, just conversations, how to have proper conversations on the phone versus upfront and personal. But speech therapy, occupational therapy, ABA, we have certainly throughout our time in this partnership, that is what we've been doing, and it has been working for us, because one thing that as a parent, your firstborn child, single parent, you realize the motivation, it kind of starts and begins with me. I have to instill something for my child, and so as we've gone through our ages and our stages, we have figured out what different therapies are needed, and so I hope that answers, Jennifer.
It does, exactly. Thank you. I think that's over time, it's been different therapies and different things that have been helpful, and making progress that way. I'd like to go back now also to Tarek, who has such great things to share. And so just curious, Tarek, maybe a little bit about school. I know there was one question earlier about school and struggling with some things at school. And so just wondering, Tarek, what were some things that the teachers or school did that helped you, and maybe some things that weren't as helpful?
I've had teachers that really pushed me, and they never accepted my disorder as an excuse. The teachers that only gave me the perfect amount of slack that I needed to be successful really helped me. Because at the other token, some teachers probably took it too easy on me, to my own admission, and that would fall under not helpful for sure. You also find, in not just school, but everywhere, you'll find that people think that every autistic person is the same, or they think that they know what we need because they've worked with somebody else on the spectrum, or they know somebody else on the spectrum. There's no template for our success. Sure, we share some common traits, but what we need is what we need to truly be successful is specific to each individual, I really believe.
Oh, that is so true. And I always said, and you said it beautifully there too, is you've met one person with autism, then you've met one person with autism. And there's such a different flavor. There's so many different varieties that you cannot judge just because somebody has that.
It's very common that it goes the other way, though. So
it's common it goes the other way. What do you mean?
It's common that people will say that they very frequently, we'll be out in the community and somebody, will say like, oh, do you mind if I ask, does he have autism? Because he'll be humming or rocking, and I'm like, oh yeah, no offense at all, yeah, he's autistic. And they'll be like, oh yeah, my nephew's autistic, I know exactly what it's like for him, or something. I'm like, no, you don't. Neither one of them, you have no idea.
Totally. Awesome. And so also, Tarek, there is a question that came in earlier about success and defining success. And I know I was going to ask you a question, what you're most proud of. And so I was thinking maybe that was a little bit of it, but I was, if you want to talk a little bit what about you're proud of, and if you want to add something to that about kind of how you define success. And then I'd love also Ashanti and Mindy to help us define that, but we'll start with what you feel proud of.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. We didn't answer how he defines success. So maybe I'll read what he's proud of, and then he can type out how he defines success, and you can come back to him.
Great.
He said, it was very short. He said that what he is most proud of is the traveling that he's done, and the genuine relationships that he's built. And elaborating on a little bit, I know that in the beginning, we went from when we met, it was obviously very professional, and that was great. And then we became very close. And then he went through a phase where he didn't see me as a friend, and I was only there because I had to be, and this and that. And we went through like a little bit of a thing where I'm like, I don't actually have to be here. Like, I'm with you because I want to be here. And yeah, he went through all that. And then now, I mean, he, again, like you guys saw in the pictures, he was a groomsman at my wedding. So that's definitely far beyond professional. He and my wife have a relationship, tons of my friends. The traveling that he's done, some of the breakthroughs were with people that were very good friends of mine, who are now also very good friends of him. One of them was actually his para. I needed a job. He knew Tarek. Tarek needed a para. Worked out perfectly. He went to Skyview. I trained him. He worked with Tarek for 2 years. Great in his success. No prior experience working with anybody with autism, which is probably actually better. So yeah, his genuine relationships, and the places he's got to go and see, is what he said he's most proud of.
Well, that is awesome. Thank you. Well, if there's more that you want to add to that, Tarek, go ahead and you can work on that now. And I'm going to go to Ashanti next.
Let's see if I read the question.
Maybe. I had tons of tech issues early on, so there we go.
That is me. Yeah, so we got a visitor here. Have a seat.
Hi.
He can't hear you guys, but I would just basically have to say that we have been defining success by the many milestones that we have had within our education, especially with relationships, just like Tarek said, my son is one of the most friendliest people you'll ever meet. He has a lot of friends and he's able to advocate for himself, that is those are big things for us. And that's, as a parent, that's all I've kind of ever wanted, for my child to be able to learn and function well within his academics, his studies, and just as an individual to love life. My son has, just like our other panelists, he's traveled. He's been able to see a lot of the things that he's only uh, seen on TV or heard about, getting to go to the zoo, like San Diego Zoo, those types of things, they're also very rewarding, because my son someday wants to be a zoologist. And so we have done our best to put him in the path of just people who, we've got his name is Jungle Jordan. He's got about 1 million followers on YouTube. And I didn't get to submit the picture to you guys, but during COVID, it was a really hard time for my son because we didn't get to go out a lot and we didn't get to do a lot of the things that we normally got to do. But long story short, Jungle Jordan came. Asan thought he was getting ready to have Sunday school or something, and then Jungle Jordan was there, and to have that one-on-one, those are just, it was a one-on-one, and I'm looking as a parent, wow, my son is having a one-on-one conversation, asking questions about how you do what you do, asking about animals, and so I just define success by just having the goals met and being able, excuse me for my light, and being able to just see my child dream, and those are the things that mean the most to me as a parent.
That is beautiful. And so definitely accessing and being able to be in the community is a huge, a wonderful way to define the success. And Mindy, did you have a few tidbits on that too?
I mean, I think everything that's being said completely dovetails with what my thoughts are. So I'll try to just keep it brief. I define success based on quality of life. I don't define it, and I think that's like so much of the essence of what is being talked about here, in Ashanti's family and, Tarek, for you. I don't define it based on conventional milestones or what society expects or thinks a person should be doing. I define it based on quality of life and what a person wants for themselves and what a family wants for their child and these kinds of things. And so when I'm talking with a family, if they tell me like, hey, our biggest goal is that we can take our child to Sunday school, and we finally did that last week for the first time, I say we have just had a huge success. That kind of whatever's meaningful to them. And of course there are developmental skills that kids need to learn, but those only matter if they result in changes in quality of life. So that's the end goal.
Perfectly said, Mindy. Thank you. And I want to give these last few minutes here we have to Tarek. It looks like you might be done in creating a response, in writing something.
Yeah, it was the question here about success, right?
Right.
So he said any progress is success. Away from what his, I mean, that's a great point. To say huge gains is a bit subjective, right? So what he's saying is a little bit of progress is a success, but a little bit of progress could actually be a huge gain. So, but he said having people on the journey with you and in your corner along the way is success in itself, which is a great point as well. Because I mean, this says if you went the rest of your lives and you lacked communication and stuff like that, but I mean, if you went the whole life and you've got somebody in your corner, like Tarek says, and then he says failing over and over and over again, just having people that cared enough to do that with you is a success in itself. It would be to never try that would be the fail, would be the huge fail.
So yeah, taking some big risks in order to get that next step and to feel like you're being successful. And so defining success, I think, is different for every person. And that's a really important thing to know and to think about. Wow. I've been blown away by all of you today and what you're sharing. And I know you're having a big impact on those who are listening and being able to hear your stories. And we even have our Katrina Davis sent a message here saying all of your answers about success just brought a lot of hope and comfort to many parents. And I would echo that too. I think that is very true. Thank you, Katrina, for that comment. And also thank you to all the others who've been adding comments and thoughts and opinions into the chats, both through YouTube and through Facebook today. I hear you. You've got your son, CJ or C. Genro, about your son being tired of being everyone's experiment. And that's got to be hard as a journey as a parent and getting through those times in which you feel like you're maybe not getting somewhere when you're ready to start doing that. And also acknowledging the struggles with schools. And so I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and listening to our conversation. And I encourage you to keep participating and look forward to having you be a part of our next conversation. And thank you very much for all of our participants. And I hope you have a very good night. Bye.
Hold on. They're going to pop up.